Welcome to World News on this election day. It is now 6:30 in the West. The polls are closed in 40 states, and we now have enough results to get a sense of how this election day is going. This is the Everyone Speaks with Equal Voice.
Do your duty. Cast your ballot and let your voice be heard.
We check to see if there are problems at the polls.
We have 8 machines, and 3 of which are working right now.
And look at how today could influence the race for the White House in 2008. In other news, Al-Qaeda's spy, a major conviction, and a first look at the terrorist videotape of what was supposed to be the next 9/11. And state of emergency. Washington state fighting off fast-rising floodwaters causing record damage.
From ABC News Election Headquarters, this is World News with Charles Gibson.
Exciting it will be indeed tonight as we find out who will control 1/3 of the United States government, the 1/3, the Congress, the House, the Senate. It is all up for grabs. And I'm joined by George Stephanopoulos, our senior Washington correspondent, and a cast of people all across the country. But we want to start right out by giving you results as we know them right now. I mentioned a moment ago that so far the Democrats have gained 2 seats in the Senate, so let's look at what we know so far about the key Senate races where polls have closed. As we say, Democrats need 6 seats to gain control of the Senate. The 2 seats they have picked up so far. Number 1, in the state of Ohio, Sherrod Brown will be the new senator from the state of Ohio, defeating Mike DeWine, who had 2 terms. It is not a good year to be a Republican in the state of Ohio, as we will explain as the night goes on. Sherrod Brown here with a clear lead over Mike DeWine. In the state of Pennsylvania, Bob Casey has been elected over Rick Santorum. The lead very large, just 10% of the precincts reporting, but on the basis of exit polls and key precincts, we can project that Bob Casey will win. Rick Santorum was the number 3 ranking Republican in the Senate leadership, but Democrats set their sights on him from the beginning. Bob Casey, the state treasurer, son of a former popular governor, he has been elected to the Senate from the state of Pennsylvania. Now, a number of seats that the Democrats had to defend in order to get control of the Senate, and they have been able to defend all 3 of the tightly contested seats that they held. In the state of Maryland, we can project that Benjamin Cardin will defeat Michael Steele. This again, though the precincts reporting so far show Steele leading, we can project that Cardin will win this race. He has been in the House of Representatives since 1986. Steele, a very popular and charismatic African American, running in a very Democratic state. He is the lieutenant governor, and a lot of people thought that he had a good chance to win this race, but Benjamin Cardin will be elected in the state of Maryland. The Democrats will hold that seat. In the state of Michigan, bedeviled by economic problems, Debbie Stabenow is going to win there, we project, over Mike Bouchard, the Republican. Bouchard, the Oakland County sheriff in the Detroit area. Debbie Stabenow had to defend the seat, given the fact that Michigan has a high unemployment rate, but she has been able to do so and will be reelected there. In the state of New Jersey, Bob Menendez, who was appointed to this seat by John Corzine, the governor, has defeated Tom Kean Jr. Kean, the son of the former governor, the son of the man who was the chairman of the 9/11 Commission. Kean, a state senator, ran a good race. A lot of money went in there from the Republican Party, hoping to defeat Menendez, but they have not done so. And George Stephanopoulos, I was interested in a Washington Post headline that said, this is a race of Bush fatigue, hurting Kean, against corruption fatigue, hurting Menendez, who was tied to the Hudson County Democratic Party in New Jersey, where, may we say, there is a rich tradition of corruption.
Absolutely, and there were a lot of voters in New Jersey who didn't think that Menendez lived up to the ethical standards, but a third of them still voted for him because they were upset with President Bush. Charlie, this Senate board that you just showed shows something important. No surprises so far tonight. The Democrats holding on to all the seats they were supposed to hold on to, picking up Ohio and Pennsylvania. What we have to pay attention to now is the 3 seats of Virginia, Tennessee, and Missouri. About 3 weeks ago, the Republican Party poured a whole lot of money into those seats, trying to build a firewall to maintain Senate control. If they win 2 out of 3 of those seats, the Republicans will maintain control of the Senate.
All right, we are now ready to make another projection in the Senate, and this is a 3rd seat that the Democrats have gained, and that's in the state of Rhode Island. we can now project that Sheldon Whitehouse will defeat Lincoln Chafee. We have only a few votes in so far, but Sheldon Whitehouse, the Democratic challenger, defeating Lincoln Chafee. Chafee, the son of a longtime popular senator, John Chafee, was appointed to the seat after his father died, was elected once. He has been a very independent Republican. He voted against George Bush in 2004. He did not vote for the war in Iraq. But Sheldon Whitehouse, nonetheless, tied him to the Bush-Iraq policy. This is a blue state. This is a state that voted for John Kerry. There were just too many Democrats for Lincoln Chafee to overcome. Sheldon Whitehouse will be elected there, and I'm sort of amused that we will have a White House in the Senate.
Good point. Big disappointment for the Republicans here. They were hoping, even though Lincoln Chafee basically never voted with the president, that they were going to be able to hold on to this seat. As early as this morning, they thought they were ahead. But as you say, that state is just too blue. Only 23% of the voters in the state of Rhode Island support President Bush, his lowest approval ratings in the country.
But this is interesting. It gives now the Democrats 3 pickups from the Republicans. They are essentially halfway there to the number of seats they need to gain control of the Senate. And just a couple of things. I'm always fascinated by Rhode Island politics. The father of Lincoln Chafee and the father of Sheldon Whitehouse roomed together when they were in college. And the kids from each of these two candidates go to school together in Rhode Island.
And this is the battle of a couple of aristocrats as well, Charlie. 2 very old Rhode Island families. Lincoln Chafee tried to run an independent race at the end, but the wave was just too big for him.
A couple of other Senate races to mention before we move on, and then we'll give you a summary of where things stand in the Senate. But in the state of New York, Hillary Clinton has been elected over John Spencer. That has all the surprise of a Doris Day movie. Everybody expected Hillary Clinton to be elected there, and indeed she has. In the state of Connecticut, we can project that Joe Lieberman is going to be reelected, but reelected in a different guise here. As many people may remember, Joe Lieberman lost in the primary to Ned Lamont, the Democratic primary, early in August, 52-48 there. Joe Lieberman then decided to run as an independent, but he will caucus with the Democrats, even though he wins re-election with an awful lot of Republican votes, because the Republican candidate in the race was really a non-factor. So Joe Lieberman, who is probably the strongest, George, Republican supporter, or Democratic rather, supporter of the war in the Senate.
No question about it. He wore it as a badge of honor. And in fact, the White House made a decision here. They figured they weren't going to win the state of Connecticut no matter what. So instead of supporting their Republican candidate, Alan Schlesinger, they basically gave their tacit support to Joe Lieberman. He's actually an anomaly tonight. He's basically a pro-war candidate who won.
All right, some of the other Senate races that we're watching very closely, because there are 11 closely contested races, 8 of them being defended by Republicans, and one of the races we're watching closely is in the state of Virginia, where George Allen is trying to hold that seat. And you can see now with 81% of the precincts reporting. There's the number right down there, 81% of the precincts reporting. And you can see that George Allen, the incumbent, has a lead of 23,000 votes over Jim Webb. Democrats were very hopeful here, early in the evening, even calling us saying they thought that Jim Webb would win. But now it looks very problematical with 81% of the precincts reporting and George Allen leading.
And this race is much closer than George Allen ever expected it to be. He's going to try to pull it out. He went into it hoping to jumpstart a presidential run, but his campaign was plagued by missteps. Everybody remembers the famous macaca comment, and a lot of Virginia voters say that signaled that he was insensitive to racial minorities, but he is in this fight.
A lot of people thought that he could have won that race without ever leaving his house, that his campaign actually cost him votes rather than winning him votes, but we will keep an eye on that one until we get 100% of the vote in, or until we can make a projection. And in the state of Tennessee, where this race might have been historic if Harold Ford is able to win, because we have not projected a winner here yet, but you can see with 31% of the precincts reporting here, Bob Corker has a lead of 28,000 votes over Harold Ford, who is attempting to become the first African-American to be elected to the Senate from the South since the days of Reconstruction.
And if George Allen ran one of the worst Senate campaigns, Harold Ford ran one of the best, but Tennessee is a very, very tough state for a Democrat right now, and he's facing an uphill fight.
So to sum it up, as we said, the Democrats need to gain 6 seats to get control of the Senate, and they have picked up seats so far in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. You can see that there in the left-hand blue box. Those are the 3 states where Democrats have picked up Senate seats, and so far none have gone from the Democratic to the Republican camp. And indeed, as we said, the Democrats really were worried about defending 3 seats in Maryland, in Michigan, and New Jersey, and they have been able to defend all 3. So let me give you a couple of House races as well that we're looking at. I'm going to bring in Cokie Roberts at this point, who has been covering the House of Representatives, I think, since she was 6 years old, since her father was the majority leader of the House of Representatives for many years. So we're going to get to the House. But so far, Cokie, we have 3 gains for the Democrats in the House. The votes coming in much more slowly in the House because we don't use exit polls, key precincts. We wait till the total vote is counted.
And that's very difficult because it could go a very long time. But these are important races. One in Kentucky, Ann Northup, who is in a Democratic district but has always pulled it out in the past. And she had a very tough time. She had a personal tragedy. A child died this summer, and her campaign didn't get off to the same kind of speed that it normally does. But the Republicans expected her to win and thought that if she didn't win, that it was a harbinger of a bad night for them, and she has not won.
Right, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that race, Cokie, in just a minute. I want to mention our election coverage is going to continue right now and throughout the evening. But for some of you watching in the Western time zone, stay tuned for more world news. All right, and still ahead on this broadcast, the chilling new al-Qaeda tape, the terrorist casing U.S. targets for attacks after 9/11, planning carnage on a colossal scale. Record flooding in the Northwest, so many people stranded, and more misery is on the way. And an early warning, here come the presidential candidates. They're already running. Why do they have to start the 2008 race so soon?
This is World News with Charles Gibson, brought to you by Walmart.
I used to think that Veterans Day was a day to get out of school. Then my uncle went to serve overseas. Even though he was gone forever, he came home safe. When he wears his uniform, people smile or shake his hand. I guess when you're a veteran, you're a hero. I know he's mine.
We all know someone who has served our country. Today and every day, we say thank you to all our veterans.
This pain and itching and burning is ruining my night. I should have used
Preparation H Cream relieves burning, itching, plus maximum strength pain relief on contact. Nighttime's the right time, too. For Preparation H, pain relief on contact.
Now you see me? Now you don't. Now you see me. Now you don't. What you are seeing is how much farther, wider, and better you'll see with new Silver Star Ultra headlights from Sylvania. Because the next time you see me, I may not be alone. See farther, see wider, see better. New Silver Star Ultra headlights from Sylvania.
Ask your doctor about controlled-release formula Ambien CR. Then call today for a 7-day free trial offer. It's the only sleep aid with 2 layers to help treat both types of sleep problems. One dissolves quickly to help you fall asleep fast. The other dissolves slowly to help you stay asleep. Ambien CR is a treatment option you and your doctor can consider along with lifestyle changes and can be taken for as long as your doctor recommends. Until you know how Ambien CR will affect you, you shouldn't drive or operate machinery. Be sure you're able to devote 7 to 8 hours to sleep before being active again. Side effects may include next-day drowsiness, dizziness, and headache. It's non-narcotic. However, like most sleep medicines, it has some risk of dependency. Don't take it with alcohol. A good night's sleep shouldn't be an on-off thing. So call today for your 7-day free trial offer of the latest Ambien, Ambien CR. And don't forget the CR.
Science suggests vitamin D is a key to calcium absorption, which helps keep bones strong. New improved Caltrate has more vitamin D. Keep your bones strong to keep your body strong. New Caltrate, the key to strong bones.
For the first time since the fall of Baghdad, the government of Iraq is charging Iraqi police with torture. The Interior Ministry has charged 57 of its employees, including a police general, with torturing hundreds of detainees at a Baghdad prison. Also today, the U.S. military announced an American soldier has been killed by a roadside bomb in Baghdad. That brings the death toll for the first week of November to 19. In a London courtroom today, chilling evidence of al-Qaeda plans to attack U.S. targets was made public for the first time. at the sentencing of one of the conspirators. High-profile American targets were in the crosshairs, part of what was supposed to be a second wave of post-9/11 terror designed to inflict mass casualties. Here's our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross.
The surveillance tape centering on New York's Wall Street area was made by an al-Qaeda operative posing as a tourist from London 5 months before the 9/11 attacks. He focuses on entrances to the New York Stock Exchange, identifying security cameras and guards. At a nearby home for the elderly, the camera zooms in on a Star of David. At one point, the camera is put on its side, apparently simulating what would happen if a plane flew into the World Trade Center towers, complete with sound effects. The man authorities say made the tape and was planning the attacks is a 34-year-old British citizen of Indian descent, Dhiran Bairat, sentenced today in London to a minimum of 40 years in prison.
The case is that he could easily have caused hundreds, if not thousands, of deaths. That is the way it was put to the court and has been accepted by the judge.
Security on Wall Street has vastly improved since the tape was made, but still, it was upsetting to some who watched it outside the stock exchange today.
It makes me feel nervous. I'm actually nervous. I don't feel comfortable with it at all.
Bairat also prepared elaborate blueprints for attacks on other possible targets, including the headquarters of Citicorp in New York City, which he thought he might be able to bring down using gasoline tanker trucks. Quote, recommendation, hijacking petrol oil tankers and steering in. Of another Citicorp skyscraper, a glass tower, he noted the devastating effects of a bomb. Quote, each piece of glass becomes a potential flying piece of cutthroat shrapnel. Bairat also concluded he could avoid scrutiny by using stretched limousines, preferably black, not white, and filling them with explosives or gas cylinders, all part of, quote, a synchronized, concurrent, back-to-back execution on the same day and time. Authorities found other surveillance reports on financial locations in Newark, New Jersey and Washington, D.C. But in the end, Bairat apparently decided security was too tight in the U.S., and his plan when he was arrested by Scotland Yard was to attack subways and buildings in London, Charlie.
Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross. Thank you. Up next, the record flooding causing chaos in the Northwest and the forecast making a lot of people worried.
Here's some great health news from Smart Balance. New delicious Smart Balance Omega foods. Omega Plus buttery spread with natural plant sterols and omega-3 from the sea. Smart Balance peanut butter with 1,000 milligrams of omega-3s per serving. Omega Plus light mayonnaise and omega cooking oil. They give you more omega-3s with no hydrogenation and no trans fat naturally. Smart Balance Omega foods. So important, and you're gonna love them.
Someone you love may be a numismatist. It's true, millions collect coins. It's the rush they get collecting something worthwhile. But they need your help. Give them genuine coins from the United States Mint. Polished, radiant, irresistible. Your gift will make a difference for generations to come. Visit usmint.gov. United States Mint. Genuinely worthwhile.
When mucus causes chest congestion and coughing, it can be a late night.
Here's mucus. We'll be up all night. And now, a word from Mucinex DM. Mucinex DM!
Mucinex DM breaks up mucus and quiets coughing.
Uh-oh. We're off the air!
And Mucinex DM lasts for 12 hours.
I need a new gig.
Mucinex in, mucus out.
Maud, cows are out.
I found him.
Things are easier to find when they're stuck together. Gladware interlocking lids lock together so you always know where they are. For lids that are easy to find, get Gladware interlocking lids. And for more food storage needs, get Glad food bags.
I couldn't quite believe it. One little pill a day helped my heartburn go away. The problem was it came back. It broke through, especially at night. Then I found this, Mylanta Ultimate Strength. It's something new for heartburn, even the kind that breaks through. Mylanta's really fast, and my doctor said I could take it even though I'm on a daily medicine.
When heartburn breaks through, try new Mylanta Ultimate Strength. Look for our coupon in this Sunday's paper.
Vote 2006. Red, blue, Republican, Democrat. Stay the course. Get the troops out. Gas prices, taxes, healthcare, values. What will tonight's results mean for you? Tomorrow, for answers, turn to the best political team in America on World News with Charles Gibson.
An investigation is underway into a runway accident at Chicago's O'Hare Airport today, the fourth runway incident in the past week and a half. The wing of one United Airlines jet clipped the tail of another United plane as both taxied for takeoff. The National Transportation Safety Board is already looking into 3 other recent runway incidents. The National Guard has been called out in the Pacific Northwest tonight to help deal with record flooding caused by days of heavy rain. The hardest hit areas of Washington State and Oregon have been pounded by 10 inches of rain, triggering mudslides, closing roads, and forcing evacuations, and it's not over yet. ABC's Neil Karlinski is in Snohomish, Washington.
The rain started 4 days ago and hasn't stopped. A solid, steady downpour, the likes of which even people in this rain-prone part of the world have never seen.
I'm very surprised. I was here yesterday and it was coming up very rapidly. I didn't expect that at all.
Cities and towns from Washington to Oregon have been drenched as more than a half-dozen rivers smash old flood records and continue to rise. Dozens of cars and homes were left deep underwater. Emergency crews are out in force rescuing those left stranded, including a family of 4 lifted from their car by helicopter. Michael Oswalt and his family left their home and moved into a shelter.
I got my wife and 4 kids, so I decided better go. Seems safer, and now they're telling us it's under 4 feet of water.
Entire towns and neighborhoods are cut off, and it's no longer just the floodwaters, but all the debris, tables, pieces of trees, even cars that are now floating down these rivers. Forecasters say the storm is the result of what's called the Pineapple Express, a pattern of warm, wet air blowing in from Hawaii. It's carried with it more than 7.5 inches of rain to the Seattle area already. That's nearly 2 inches more than the normal monthly total this time of year, and more is on the way.
They get a temporary break for the next couple of days, but a large and wet storm system comes into the Northwest again late Thursday night and Friday.
With the threat of mudslides and more rain on the horizon, the rain-soaked Pacific Northwest isn't out of the woods yet. Neil Karlinski, ABC News, Snohomish, Washington.
And when we come back, on your mark, get set, 2008. In many ways, the race is already on.
If you have a history of smoking and breathing problems, it could be COPD, which includes chronic bronchitis and emphysema. Discover Spiriva, the only once-daily inhaled maintenance prescription treatment for COPD. Spiriva keeps airways open to help you breathe better for a full 24 hours. And it's not a steroid. Spiriva does not replace fast-acting inhalers for sudden symptoms. Tell your doctor about your medicines, including eye drops and illnesses like glaucoma, urinary, and prostate problems. These may worsen with Spiriva. The most common side effect is dry mouth. Others include constipation and problems passing urine. If you have vision changes or eye pain, your breathing suddenly worsens, you get hives, or your throat or tongue swells, stop taking Spiriva and contact your doctor. Spiriva is one of many treatment options to consider with your doctor. So make a habit of breathing better with Spiriva.
The Hyundai Azera. With 8 airbags, electronic stability control, and a 263 horsepower V6 all-standard, plus more interior space than a BMW 760i. It may be the most car for the money ever. It's no wonder the Hyundai Azera was ranked most appealing large car by J.D. Power & Associates.
Now Promise Buttery Spread helps maintain a healthy heart when eaten instead of butter or margarine. And now it's rich with heart health essentials like omega-3, and it's less in saturated fat. Plus, there's no trans fat and lots of creamy, buttery taste. In fact, it's our healthiest and tastiest buttery spread yet. No wonder hearts are beating louder. Promise Buttery Spread, taking your health to heart.
Last May, Walgreens helped me choose the Medicare prescription plan that best covers my medication. So I told Sue about it.
I went to Walgreens with my prescription, and they gave me a free report that made it easy to choose a plan.
We can help you, too. Whether you want to switch plans or you're turning 65, we'll even give you $50 in coupons. Walgreens accepts all major plans, and we're here for all your Medicare needs.
That's why millions of seniors have turned to Walgreens with their Medicare questions.
Wednesday. I need to get the hell off to Silent. The best episode of the year arrives. The fall finale.
Close your eyes.
No! An all-new Lost. Wednesday at 9/8 Central. Only on ABC.
Finally, the voters will have the last word tonight, but the campaigning will not end. After all the attack ads, political spin, and candidates relentlessly on message, you'd like to think America will get time out from politics. Not a chance. For the 2008 presidential race is getting underway already. Here's ABC's Kate Snow.
Good luck tonight. Thank you. Early this morning at the train station in Chappaqua, New York, Senator Hillary Clinton was thanking commuters for their support.
Hi.
Support in 2006 and possibly in 2008. Even her closest advisors say they don't know if Senator Clinton will run for president.
I can't make a decision now. I have made no decision.
But the signs are there, the $15 million war chest, the staffers, the constant travel.
The race for president unofficially is on and has been for months.
American politics today, the reality is that the campaign for the next presidential cycle begins the day after one is elected.
There are a dozen Democrats who may run.
The day after the election, Democrats are going on a shopping spree. They're looking for a candidate who can take advantage of the new political environment for Democrats.
Potentially 12 Republican candidates could run as well. And maybe even one independent billionaire, most of whom have been crisscrossing the country for months, testing the waters. Just look at Republican frontrunner Senator John McCain's flight plan for the past month, 21 states in 30 days.
Nice to see you.
Democrat John Edwards, who was on the losing ticket last time around, and Republican Governor of Massachusetts Mitt Romney topped the list for the number of visits to Iowa, home of the first presidential caucus.
How are you?
And then there are the wild cards. Former Vice President Al Gore keeps saying he can't imagine running, but he's not shutting the door completely.
I don't believe that there's a politician alive that doesn't actually have an interest in being president.
Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani draws huge crowds. So does Illinois Senator Barack Obama, who's taken on rock star status. Those around Obama say he'd have no trouble quickly raising money, but the lesser-known potential candidates will need to act quickly to lock in donors. Strategists on both sides expect a flood of announcements around the new year, the official start to campaign 2008. Kate Snow, ABC News, New York.
That is world news for this election day. Our special midterm coverage begins in just a moment. I'm Charlie Gibson. For all of us at ABC News, stay with us.
Three are set. Tonight, they go big.
Super Mario's at it again.
Or go home. Your vote decides who's heading to the grand finale. Dancing with the Stars. Live tonight, 8/7 Central only.
Fill your home with special delights. Ross is all you need to decorate. Trim your house, take it to new heights. Ross is all you need to decorate. Light the candles, hang the stockings. Save up on when you shop at Ross. Make your home a home that invites. Ross is all you need to decorate.
We've got a guy who claims he's captured a Mercurian.
Finally, living, breathing proof that Mercury insurance rates are so low because it's run by aliens from the planet Mercury. There you go. That's an armadillo.
Call 8884-MERCURY or visit mercurytheory.com.
Don't be left behind. Watch Lost Wednesday nights here on ABC7 and start your own adventure today. See your local Chevy dealer and check out the all-new 2007 Chevy Tahoe.
And if you are just joining us, I welcome you to coverage of Election Night 2006. Quite a number of races going on that we have to report on for the Senate, for the House, control there, and 36 governorships as well to be decided tonight. The numbers, again, to keep in mind. To take control of the Senate, the Democrats would have to pick up 6 switches. They would have to win 6 seats from the Republicans. And to gain control of the House, the Democrats need to pick up 15 seats from the Republicans. And this is the tote board that we're going to be using all through the night. And so far, we can project that the Democrats are going to gain 3 Senate seats from the Republicans. That's so far. And so far, they have gained 3 seats from the Republicans in the House. But as we have said, there are many more votes to be counted on Vote 2006.
This is an ABC News special. Today, all across America, the people spoke. On Iraq, the war on terror, healthcare, the economy, values. In this close election, with control of the House and Senate in question, who will be making the decisions? And what will tonight really mean for the race for the White House? From ABC News, Vote 2006. Now reporting from ABC News election headquarters in New York, Charles Gibson.
And we do welcome you, and we want to bring you right up to date on where things stand right now in the United States Senate. 33 seats at stake tonight, but 20 of them we basically knew who was going to win those races because they were really not heavily contested by one party or the other. But there were 11 seats that were critical to who would gain control of the Senate. 8 of them being defended by Republicans, 3 of them being defended by Democrats. All right, as we have said, in order to gain control of the Senate, Democrats must get 6 switches from the Republicans. One that they have gotten so far tonight, because we can project it in the state of Rhode Island, Lincoln Chafee, the incumbent, has been defeated by Sheldon Whitehouse. Whitehouse, a former state attorney general, Chafee, the man who succeeded his father. His father, John Chafee, a very popular senator, died. Chafee won a term, but has not been reelected in this year. Chafee, a very independent Republican, but it wasn't enough. And you have a fascinating statistic about this race.
Stunning, Charlie. We looked at the exit polls in the state of Ohio, and we asked the voters, in the state of Rhode Island, excuse me, we asked the voters, do you approve of the job that Senator Chafee was doing? 62% said yes. Yet they voted him out of office. This is all about President Bush in the war. Rhode Island is the most anti-Bush state in the country. He has only a 23% approval rating there. They are very much against the war. This is a very blue, very Democratic state.
So they approved of Chafee, but they don't approve of the president. And in this very Democratic state, they have voted Chafee out of office.
Even though Lincoln Chafee in 2004 didn't even vote for the president.
Didn't vote for the president and did not vote for the war in Iraq. All right. Ohio next. Sherrod Brown there has defeated Mike DeWine, the incumbent senator. DeWine had 2 terms in the Senate, but we're going to be saying this all night long. To be a Republican in Ohio is to be in trouble. And Sherrod Brown tied Mike DeWine very much to the president, to the war on Iraq. It was a referendum on being a Republican in Ohio, and Sherrod Brown has won that seat. That's the 2nd switch. In Pennsylvania, Bob Casey, the state treasurer, has defeated Rick Santorum. Santorum high in the leadership of the Republicans in the Senate. But as I said earlier, the Democrats in Pennsylvania set their sights, indeed national Democrats set their sights on Santorum very early in this election year and have been able to defeat him. Now, Virginia is a critical Senate race where the Democrats feel they have to win if they are going to gain control of the Senate. And there you see we've got 86% of the precincts reporting in the state of Virginia, and George Allen, the incumbent, has a lead of about, about 25,000 votes over Jim Webb. And that will be a deep disappointment to the Democrats if they lose that one, because they had counted on picking up Virginia.
They absolutely had, and they need to pick up Virginia. The Republicans have built a defense in the South, in Virginia, in Tennessee, and Missouri. They've poured a lot of money in there. They know that if they hold 2 out of 3 of those states, then they're going to control the Senate.
And so far they're ahead in Virginia, and so far they are also ahead in the state of Tennessee. This is where Bob Corker, the former Chattanooga mayor, was running against Harold Ford Jr., member of the Congress, a man who wanted to be the first African-American to be elected to the Senate in the South since Reconstruction. We have half the precincts now reporting in the state of Tennessee, and a significant lead, 42 plus 17, that's 59,000 vote lead for Corker over Harold Ford. And Missouri is the next one. And this is a race that we think is going to be tight right down to the end. Jim Talent is the incumbent Republican who won a special election over Gene Carnahan in 2002. Claire McCaskill is the state auditor who has run statewide before, so she has good name recognition. There were tough ads in this campaign. This one, you'll remember, is the race where Michael J. Fox did a stem cell ad in favor of Claire McCaskill. The Democrats are counting on this if they're going to get control of the Senate. Right now, McCaskill trailing Talent, but it is very early in that race, which gives us the switch seat board of +3 so far for the Democratic Party, but things not looking good in Tennessee, not looking good in Virginia, and so the chances of the Democrats gaining control of the Senate?
Not impossible, but let's take a look at your tote board and give an idea of what it will take for the Democrats to do it.
I want to spend some time on this board, if you can look at this, because these are the races. I mentioned there are 11 tightly contested races that we've been looking at. 8 on the left being defended by Republicans, and 3 on the right being defended by Democrats. We haven't mentioned those races, but in Maryland we can project that Ben Cardin will win. In Michigan we can project that Debbie Stabenow will win. In New Jersey we can predict that Bob Menendez will win. So the Democrats have been able to defend, I don't have the telestrator on here, the Democrats have been able to defend all 3 seats that they had to hold. To get control of the Senate, they have to win 6 of these 8 seats. So far they have won in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island, but if Tennessee does go to the Republicans, and this is just a possibility I'm putting on here, this is not definite, and if they're able to control Virginia, they would then have to win Arizona, where they don't have much of a chance, Missouri, where they're trailing now, and Montana, where their chances are problematical as well.
Very, very tough, because Arizona is really a long shot for the Democrats. They poured $1 million in there in the last weekend and the last Thursday, but they always knew this was a long shot against John Kyle, a popular incumbent senator in that state. It could be a close race, but it's not one the Democrats are counting on at all.
Anyway, I hope this board is understandable to folks, and as I say, so far, as we're watching these 8 seats that Republicans are defending, so far the Democrats have picked up 3, but those may be actually the easiest 3 for them to pick up. All right, we're going to go to the House now, and as we've mentioned, 15 seats the Republicans need to, or the Democrats need to pick up from the Republicans, and we can give you some of the key House races so far and how those have gone. In Indiana's 9th district, this is a 3rd-time rematch between Barron Hill and Mike Sodrell. Sodrell won the last one, although Hill had won the one before that. Anyway, they go back at it a 3rd time, and we can project that Barron Hill will win this seat in Indiana. There were 3 seats being contested closely in the state of Indiana. We'll give you the others, but this means that the Democrats have picked up all 3 seats that were at stake in the state of Indiana.
And this is a bitter pill for the Republicans, Charlie, because that was the one race right there they were hoping to hold on to in Indiana. Indiana, a very tough state for Republicans this year, in part because of local issues. The Republican governor, Mitch Daniels, imposed daylight savings time across the state. That wasn't very popular. Number 2, he privatized his toll road. I know this sounds like a small deal, but it was a big deal. It made a lot of people upset. It helped cost 3 Republicans their seats.
And a lot of Republicans actually said, don't put too much stake in Indiana. Even if we lose a bunch of races there, it may be because of local issues, not so much of the war in Iraq.
But go back to that map you showed just a short while ago. Those 5 states across the middle of the country, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and New York. We said if the Democrats pick up 3 seats in each state, it's going to be a blowout. They've started it in Indiana.
They have indeed and done all 3 of those races in Indiana. I want to show you just a board on the 2nd district in Indiana. This is around South Bend, where Joe Donnelly has defeated the incumbent Chris Ciccolo. Donnelly, a businessman there. Ciccolo tried to say he's an out-of-touch millionaire. Well, he's now going to have a job in the House of Representatives. Donnelly will win that district in the northern part of Indiana. And then in the 8th district of Indiana, we can project that Brad Ellsworth is going to defeat John Hostetler. Hostetler had 6 terms in the House of Representatives, always ran a very family-based campaign. His own family was very much involved, but this is always a dicey district in southern Indiana, and Ellsworth, who is the county sheriff in Vandenberg County, has won there.
Absolutely, and he's a very tough, different kind of Democrat as well. He has not promised to vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. John Hostetler, as you said, I think his sister runs his campaigns. He always rejects help from the National Republican Party. Not sure it would have made much difference this time, but he got blown out.
3 contested districts in Indiana, 3 wins for the Democratic Party. Now, George has been talking through the night about the 3rd district of Kentucky, and this is one we want to put up next, where Ann Northrup was the incumbent Republican running against John Yarmouth. Yarmouth tied her again to George Bush. She tried to establish her independence by saying Don Rumsfeld ought to resign as Secretary of Defense. And you said that the Republicans were telling you if Ann Northrop went down, it was going to be a tough night.
Absolutely. I had breakfast with the chairman of the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee in early September. He said this was the one race he was going to watch early in the evening, and if Ann Northrop lost, he believed the Republicans were going to lose the House.
All right. We're going to look at the 15th District of Ohio. This is a district where Deborah Price has been in office for 7 terms in the House of Representatives and is number 4 in the House leadership. She's always gotten, in all of her races, 60% or better when she has run for office. Mary Jo Kilroy, a Franklin County Commissioner, is running against her. And this race really could be a litmus of how things are going to go.
It really is. This is pivotal. I think so far Deborah Price is doing a little bit better than even some of her colleagues expected. As you said, she's the 4th leading Republican in the House of Representatives. She was facing that Ohio tide, but so far she's hanging in there. This will be a real morale boost for the Republicans if she holds on.
All right, we're going to go to the 13th District in Florida. This is an open district in Florida. Catherine Harris retired from this district to run for the Senate. And Vern Buchanan, who was an auto dealer there and who put a lot of money into his own campaign, $5 million by some estimates, running against Christine Jennings, who's a businesswoman there and had Emily's List support. Cokie Roberts was talking earlier about the women's vote in this, and this was considered to be a critical race for the women's vote. So far, Vern Buchanan leading, but this is a race basically, given the demographics of that district, that the Republicans ought to win easily.
It shouldn't be close. Sarasota is a very, very Republican city. On the other hand, Democrats did believe up until last week or so that they had a very good chance at this race. This will be a disappointment to them if they don't take it.
I want to look at the 16th District of Florida as well, and that one a lot of attention has been paid to because that was the district represented by Mark Foley, and Foley was considered to be a shoo-in for re-election. But he had to resign after the House Page scandal erupted, and the party, the Republican Party of Florida, put forth Joe Negrin as the candidate there. But it was Foley's name on the ballot. So if you wanted the Republican Negrin to win, you still had to sort of bite your lip and vote for Foley.
And you have to give a lot of credit to Joe Negrin that this race is even close right now. The day the Mark Foley scandal broke, the day he resigned, the majority leader of the House, John Boehner, conceded it. He threw it away. He didn't think the Republicans had a chance. Joe Negrin has had a great slogan for the last 4 weeks. He said, punch Foley. That way you could get your anger out at Foley and vote for Joe Negrin.
Anyway, that stands right now 49 to 48%. Not enough information yet to call that race. We talked about scandal affecting a lot of races, particularly that one in Florida. I want to look at the 10th District of Pennsylvania, where this is a district solidly Republican in the northeast corner of the state. And you would think that Don Sherwood, he's got 4 terms in the House, you would think he'd be easy for re-election, but Don Sherwood ran into some problems and had to admit to his district that indeed he had an extramarital affair. He also was accused of, what was he accused of? Beating up the mistress, I guess.
Strangler, and trying to strangle her, Charlie. It was not a good race for Don Sherwood. President Bush went there at the end. He stood by Don Sherwood. Don Sherwood did an ad where basically he apologized to his whole district for it. Doesn't look like it was enough.
Apologized to his wife, settled a lawsuit brought against him by the former mistress. Don Sherwood in a lot of trouble because of that, and Chris Carney there, as we showed you, is leading in that district. So the switch seats in the House so far. We have the Republicans picking up 4 seats in the House so far tonight, the 3 in Indiana, the race in Kentucky, and I should mention that the House races will be more, what did I say?
You said it's Democrats.
I'm sorry, Democrats have picked up 4 seats from the Republicans, and I should mention that the election results and the totals will be coming in more slowly in the House because we're waiting for the raw vote totals. There are no exit polls in the House seats. There's really no way to project those races as easily until we get the raw vote totals. So those races will be coming more slowly, coming in more slowly. So let's go to Donna Brazil and George Will, and if I can call in Mark Halperin in just a moment, we'll talk to him as well. George, you say this is normal. This kind of thing happens in a second-term presidency in the off-year election that they typically lose. But this is much a referendum, is it not, on the war?
Oh, absolutely. When you showed an earlier graphic that showed disapproval of George Bush and disapproval of the Iraq War, I think they were 1 percentage point apart. So this is a referendum. It means that the Democrats succeeded in their plan, which was to turn this not into a choice locally between one candidate and another, but rather a referendum on the war on the national issue. An irony, however, is this. We could be seeing the creation of a more conservative House of Representatives than the one that we just had. George Stephanopoulos mentioned a moment ago you're watching liberal, moderate Republicans in the North in jeopardy, yet the Republicans gaining perhaps seats in the South. That means that the Republican Party is losing its more liberal members and therefore becoming more conservative. The Democratic Party is gaining tonight because it has now begun to run more conservative opponents, candidates such as the one who just beat Mr. Hostetler, a gun-toting sheriff in southern Indiana. The governor of Ohio, the governor-elect Mr. Strickland, is a pro-gun candidate, pro-Second Amendment rights. So the Democratic caucus is probably getting a bit more conservative. The Republican caucus getting a bit more conservative.
Yeah, I said earlier on World News tonight that you have a bunch of Democrats running who would be very comfortable, Donna Brazil, in Republican suits.
Well, I don't know about that. Let me tell you why. They ran really traditional bread and butter campaigns, talking about raising the minimum wage, lowering prescription drug prices, alternative energy. These are issues that are really strong with Democratic voters as well as independents. They may be moderate Democrats, but they're being elected by progressives, they're being elected by liberals, and of course, independents.
So which Mark Halperin? You come on in here for just a moment. Our political director, Mark Halperin from ABC News. So which is it? What kind of a Democratic caucus will there be, whether they're in the majority or the minority?
Let's see at the end of the day, Charlie, when all the Democratic winners are named. I think there are going to be some who are more liberal. And I think part of the magic of Democrats, part of the good strategy they had, if they pull off a lot of these wins, is in conservative places, they recruited conservative candidates. In some places, they recruited liberals. And in some places, we may see liberals win on this anti-war sentiment who Democrats didn't really think had much of a hope of winning.
Republicans have always tried to make liberal a dirty word in this country, and liberals have tried to make conservative a dirty word, but has it worn off, that liberal label?
No, it hasn't. You didn't see too many Democrats saying they're liberal. What a lot of Democrats were able to say is we're anti-war. And so far, in the races we've seen decided, anti-war is as good a slogan as any for this election.
All right, Mike Halperin, thanks very much. And we're going to take a break, come back. We'll go down when we come back to Terry Moran, who, as I mentioned, is at a rather jubilant Democratic headquarters in Washington. Nothing to be totally jubilant about yet, but they've waited a long time to celebrate something. So we'll go to Terry. Stay with us.
ABC Vote 2006. A combination of paper ballots, levers, and punch cards. Election night in America. Live coverage of ABC Vote 2006 continues. Here again, Charles Gibson.
Don't want to ignore the governor's races to be decided today. There are 36 gubernatorial seats to be decided today. 22 now in Republican hands and 14 in Democratic hands. And so far tonight, we have had 4 switches, and I will run them down very quickly. We've had a switch in the state of Ohio, where Democrat Ted Strickland has been elected. In Massachusetts, where Deval Patrick has been elected. In New York, George Pataki was the governor. The new governor will be a Democrat, Eliot Spitzer. And in Maryland, Martin O'Malley has defeated Ben Ehrlich, who is the incumbent governor in the state of Maryland. So that gives the Democrats a +4. There's one House race that I want to talk about in Connecticut. We're not yet ready to project this race in the 5th District of Connecticut between Nancy Johnson, who has served 12 terms in the House, and Chris Murphy. But the Democrats have been hoping to pick up 3 seats in the state of Connecticut, and Chris Murphy is leading, as you can see, with 15% of the precincts reporting. We're not ready to project the race, but we can report that Nancy Johnson has made a phone call to Chris Murphy and conceded the race. So we're not ready to call it yet, but she has. And so it would appear there in Connecticut, where the Democrats are hoping to pick up 3 seats, that they have picked up 1 so far. Now, just very quickly, I want to go to Terry Moran, who's down in Democratic headquarters in the city of Washington. I said, Terry, earlier, you can't put too much into the atmosphere at a headquarters, but the Democrats, I guess, are feeling pretty good.
They sure are, Charlie. There's a lot of votes to be counted, but the Democrats in this room, who have so much pent-up frustration after so many defeats, they can feel it. They can feel it, they can taste it, they can smell it, and they're starting to drink it, in fact. These are people, some of whom have never worked on a winning campaign before. And while, as I say, there's a long way to go in this night, they feel this night is going to be different. A sign of that, the House Minority Leader still, Nancy Pelosi, who stands to become Speaker if the Democrats take over, has already made an appearance here tonight. She came out here, the crowd went nuts. It's a clear sign that the Democrats are feeling very confident indeed.
And they're going nuts again right behind you, Terry. I've covered a lot of campaigns. There's nothing better than a winning campaign headquarters. And boy, is there nothing worse than when you're at the headquarters of a candidate who's lost. We'll be back.
This is an ABC News special. Today, all across America, the people spoke. On Iraq, the war on terror, healthcare, the economy, values. In this close election, with control of the House and Senate in question, who will be making the decisions? And what will tonight really mean for the race for the White House? From ABC News, Vote 2006. Now reporting from ABC News election headquarters in New York, Charles Gibson.
And we welcome you back just to bring you up to date on where things stand right now. As we've said all night, the Republicans are defending a lot of Senate seats. The Democrats need to pick up 6 if they're going to gain control of the Senate. So far, they have picked up 3. We'll review those in just a moment. There it is. The Democrats would need to pick up 6 switched seats from the Republicans. They have gotten 3 so far. Let's take a look at which 3 they are. Number 1, in the state of Ohio, Mike DeWine has gone down to defeat to Sherrod Brown. Number 2, Pennsylvania, Bob Casey has defeated Rick Santorum with a major win here, 60 to 40%. And you can see we have 45% of the precincts reporting there in Pennsylvania. And in Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse, I like to say there's going to be a White House in the Senate now, has defeated Lincoln Chafee. Chafee, a major approval rating from people in the state of Rhode Island. What was it, 62%?
62% approved of the job he was doing. They still voted him out.
They still voted him out because the Iraq War and President Bush unpopular in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island is a very Democratic state. So those are the 3 switches so far, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island, that have gone from the Republican to the Democratic Party. But in the race is still outstanding, and Democrats would have to win a number of them. Republicans are still doing rather well, as we've reviewed in some of the other Senate seats, and we'll get to those a little bit later. There are 3 House seats that we have projected since we last left you, and I want to bring you up to date on those. All of them switches from the Republican to the Democratic Party. In the 5th District of Connecticut, and again, the Democrats would need to pick up 15 seats to gain control of the House. Nancy Johnson trailing Chris Murphy in the 5th District of Connecticut. Nancy Johnson's had 12 terms in the House, 24 years. Democrats have always thought or tried to beat her. They've never been able to do so. They have. Chris Murphy only 33 years old, but he made Iraq an issue, and he has defeated Nancy Johnson tonight. She has called to concede that race. In the 18th District of Ohio, this is what we call one of the scandal districts, where Bob Ney had to resign, did so just last week. Joy Padgett was his hand-picked candidate to run in his place. Zach Space, a Democratic attorney in the district, was able to win that race in the 18th District of Ohio. And in New Hampshire, in the 2nd District, we can project now that Paul Hodes has defeated Charlie Bass. Charlie Bass, a 6-term member of the House. Again, Iraq, President Bush, the war, the issue there. Cokie Roberts, they are now halfway there, or a little less than half, the 7 of the 15 they need.
They are, but these are all districts, Charlie, with the exception of that Kentucky district, that we really expected them to win. And so they haven't picked off any high-growing fruit yet. These are districts in many cases where John Kerry won in 2004, or for instance in Deborah Price's district in Ohio, 50-50. Same with Nancy Johnson's district in Connecticut. And by the way, Charlie, those are 2 very senior women to be losing in the House. They were very prominent in the House and in their party on a lot of women's issues. So that'll be interesting to see what that loss will mean.
So basically, you're saying that the Democrats so far are picking off the low-hanging fruit.
That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That they're picking off the seats that John Kerry carried, or that we expected them to pick off for reasons of scandal or personal problems of the incumbent. And so far, there really are not any big surprises here, with the possible exception of that Kentucky seat. But the other thing is that we have talked a lot about these individual races, Ohio having its problems, Indiana having its problems. But what has struck me in these exit polls is that 62% of the people said that they were voting for the House of Representatives on national issues, not local issues. And that means the Democrats did succeed in turning this upside down from the old Tip O'Neill, all politics is local.
Well, George Stephanopoulos, I remember a Republican official saying on Saturday, we've tried to make this local, 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 and the Democrats have tried to make this national, national, national.
And by 2-1, as Koki just said, the voters said it was national issues, not local issues, that they were decided on. And you know, this is a vindication of the Democratic strategy, a repudiation, really, of the Republican ones so far.
Martha Raddatz, I want to turn to you. Martha Raddatz, who covers the White House for ABC News. And Martha, I'm curious, if we know, is the president watching these election results come in, or is somebody just coming in and informing him? And what do you have a sense about as far as the mood of the White House is concerned?
Well, I've been in communication with someone who has been with the president tonight, and he said, indeed, the president is watching the returns come in. He's also hearing from various campaigns. I sense that it is a very downbeat mood there. They will not talk about that publicly at all, but they are realistic. They are watching this, Charlie, and think about it. The bad news that the Republicans are getting tonight points straight to the president. This president has defined himself by national security and his Iraq policy. Has been trying to sell his so-called strategy for victory in Iraq for the last year. He has made so many speeches about Iraq. He has tried to tie in Iraq to the global war on terrorism. It hasn't worked.
All right, Martha Raddatz at the White House. We mentioned a little bit earlier in the evening, it's a simple one to project. Hillary Clinton has been a re-elected senator from the state of New York. You can see right now that she's giving a victory speech to her followers. We'll just dip into it for a couple of seconds.
I just think democracy is great, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you. I want to thank you. I want to thank you, New York, for standing with me, and I want to thank you for standing up for change. And you know, the message couldn't be clearer that it is time for a new course. Beyond all the partisan, ideological division, back to the vital, dynamic center to begin to solve the problems of New Yorkers and Americans. I've had the honor in the last 6 years to listen to you and work with you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for sending me back to the Senate to work for the public interest.
Hillary Clinton with a big victory tonight, and her husband standing right behind her. Not surprised to see him on the stage, but Hillary Clinton declaring victory and thanking her supporters here in New York. Defeating John Spencer, who ran, well, I guess an undistinguished campaign would be the least you could say, but this one was never in doubt.
He never had a chance. He didn't get much help from the National Republican Party. And of course, Charlie, all the speculation now for Hillary Clinton is going to be about 2008. She was very careful, just like George W. Bush was in his final campaign for governor of Texas, not to promise to serve out her full 6-year term.
Okay, we mentioned that there are 3 switches from the Republicans to the Democratic side in the Senate so far tonight. There are a couple of close races that we're keeping an eye on, and I want to go to those if I can get the boards up. Number 1 in the state of Virginia, where George Allen, and this one we've been watching closely all night long because it has been nip and tuck. George Allen, the incumbent, running against Jim Webb, the Democrat. Webb, a former Republican who was the Secretary of the Navy in the Reagan administration. And you can see there with now 93% of the precincts reporting, 93%. The lead is only 30,000 votes, Allen over Webb. But if George Allen does hold that lead, it would be almost impossible for the Democrats to gain control of the Senate.
That's exactly right, Charlie. And Republicans are especially hopeful about this race right now because they say all the votes from Northern Virginia, the Democratic part of the state, are in.
And then in the state of Tennessee, where Harold Ford ran such an energetic campaign against Bob Corker, the mayor of Tennessee, but we've now got 68% of the precincts reporting there, and Corker has a rather comfortable lead over Ford. We're not yet ready to project that race, but it would appear that Corker is going to defeat Ford. This is an open seat. Bill Frist, the majority leader in the Senate, stepping down there in Tennessee, and it would appear that the Republicans are going to hold that, although, as I say, too early to project that.
But if they hold on to Tennessee, if they hold on to Virginia, all but impossible for the Democrats to get control of the Senate.
So the Democratic efforts to win control of the House have been engineered, captained by Rahm Emanuel, a congressman from the state of Illinois, and he's joining us at the moment. Rahm, can you hear me? Charlie Gibson in New York.
Yes. Hey, Charlie. How are you?
So we've got, at the moment, 7 switches from the Republican to the Democratic side. Cokie Roberts said, well, so far you've picked off the low-hanging fruit, with the possible exception of the Northrop-Yarmouth race in Kentucky. But so far, these are races you anticipated winning. How do you feel overall the night looks?
Well, first I would add to that Barron Hill. That was a hotly contested race between both parties, and so I would add a second one. Look, here's how I think. We're halfway around, and we haven't gotten west of the Mississippi. So,
well, and we're waiting for an awful lot of races yet. We have a couple from Connecticut you can win. The New York races we don't know. The Pennsylvania, except for the Sherwood race, we don't know.
Well, I know, and then you haven't got any of the 3 in Philadelphia, the 1 in western Pennsylvania, the Altmaier Hart race. Right. You haven't had Florida. So you've gotten 7, and you've had, I would just say of the 7, 2 of them are what I would call the low-hanging fruit. Chris Murphy and Nancy Johnson was right down to the wire. What's significant there is Nancy Johnson was the author of the prescription drug bill that the president touted. And we made a big issue in this campaign, as you know, about direct negotiations for lower prescription drug prices. We ran ads on it in that district, and we won in that area. And so that is a very significant thing as part of the Democratic agenda, which is besides minimum wage, we are going to have direct negotiations for lower prescription drug prices. There will be a vote, and we will get that done because people are unhappy with the subsidies for the pharmaceutical industries and the HMO industry.
Rahm, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, look, I think we're at 7. We're halfway around. We have a lot to go. You look at the trends here. We're winning in Indiana, 3 seats in Indiana, a state that George Bush won with over 60% of the vote. We won 1 in Ohio. We won 1 in Pennsylvania in a Republican district that George Bush got 64% in. We won 1 in Connecticut, 1 in New Hampshire, 1 in Kentucky.
I don't want to take issue with you, but you're down in a race in Georgia. There's another race in Georgia that's very, very close. So the number could be 17 that you have to get. But overall, as you look at the numbers, because we don't have results, many of them yet in Ohio, we don't have many results, as you mentioned, in suburban Philadelphia, in the New York races where you have high hopes. As you look overall at the numbers, can you say right now you are very confident that the Democrats are going to control the House?
I can say this. I'd rather be us. I feel good, actually, to the Georgia races. I feel very good about one of them, and I think it's going to be a long night in one of them. But I feel very good about where we stand today, given that we already got 2 races we didn't expect, 3 races we didn't expect, and we have yet to go to the Arizona races, the Colorado races, the Iowa races, where we are, I'm feeling very good, and also upstate New York.
But wouldn't it be fair to say, talking about this east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi, that you've got to be at least plus 12, plus 13 by the time you get across the Mississippi in order to get there?
Well, we have stuff in Ohio that has yet to come in. Look, we're going to. My sense is by the time we get to the Mississippi River, we will be in that territory.
All right, George.
Well, I think Rahm is being very cautious right now, but what's going to be interesting to see is the rest of those seats in the state of Ohio. So far, the Democrats have only picked up 1. They were hoping for 2 or 3 there.
Yeah. All right, Rahm Emanuel, it's going to be an interesting night. It'll be interesting to talk to you later on tonight or even tomorrow.
Right.
You've had a long, long year, and I suspect there's some relief when you get to this night. 2 years,
Charlie,
right.
Don't cut me short. 2 years. I know all 22 months.
And you know these districts as well as anybody, having been chairman of the committee and trying to get to raise an awful lot of money, which you were able to do, and make so many races competitive.
There are some great candidates out there who gave a lot, they and their families and their constituents, and put a lot of on these people, and they've given a lot.
There has been a heartfelt effort both on the Democratic and Republican side in so many Senate and House seats. All right, Rahm, thanks very much. And our coverage of Vote 2006 will continue in a moment. Stay with us.
Across America, people have cast their votes. ABC Vote 2006 will return in a moment.
You know what? Tuesday is Election Day. You folks ready to vote?
Yeah.
Yep, it's all over, but the crooked vote counting now.
John Kerry, he said something very silly about Iraq, which I think John Kerry is he's kind of about 2 years ahead of himself. He's already campaigning to lose the next presidential election.
Dick Cheney said last night on Fox News that in the past few weeks, Republican candidates are picking up speed. They're picking up speed. Yeah, that tends to happen when you're going downhill real fast. You pick up speed.
Election night in America. Live coverage of ABC Vote 2006 continues. Here again, Charles Gibson.
The late-night comedians who have had some fun with these elections for quite some time now, and they'll probably have some fun with the results after tonight as well.
There, you see it on Sunday.
We have been talking so much about switches, where seats are going from the Republicans to the Democrats, but there is good news to report for a lot of Republicans. Districts that the Democrats had been hoping to pick up, we should mention some of those. The 2nd District of Kentucky, this is another House race where the Democrats had hoped to make a gain. Ron Lewis is the incumbent. We can project that he will defeat Mike Weaver in the 2nd District of Kentucky. This is a heavily George Bush district, and it would have been a great surprise if the Democrats had been able to pick it up, but they had hopes. They put money into it. 82% of the precincts reporting, and Lewis has been reelected. In the 4th District of Kentucky, Jeff Davis, who was a freshman congressman, had just one term, a West Point grad, actually speaks Arabic, which I think is interesting. Jeff Davis has been reelected, defeated Ken Lucas. He beat Davis 4 years ago and then retired, but Davis this time has beaten Ken Lucas. This again is Jeff Davis is an interesting candidate because it was 2 years ago that he defeated, when he got to the House for his first term, he defeated a fellow by the name of Nick Clooney.
Nick Clooney, and you know who that is?
Nick Clooney is the father of.
You got it.
Father of George.
And you're right about Kentucky. The Democrats had poured money into all 3 seats in Kentucky. We're only able to pick up 1.
Right. And in the 2nd District of Virginia, another freshman Republican representing that district, Thelma Drake, Phil Kellum. The Democrats had hoped to defeat her with Kellum. He kept calling Iraq a mess. She was a strong supporter of the war, but this is a very military district. It's down in the Norfolk and Virginia Beach area. There is so much defense contracting down there and defense bases, etc. And we can project with 98% of the precincts reporting, she has defeated Kellum in the 2nd District of Virginia. All 3 of those are holds for the Republicans. Now, I mentioned when we were talking to Rahm Emanuel that Republicans were actually doing fairly well against Democrats in a couple of districts in Georgia. These are districts that the Republicans hope to win from the Democrats. And there in the 8th District of Georgia, Jim Marshall is ahead now of Mac Collins of 51-49. That was 63% of the precincts to report. And then in the 12th District of Georgia, we have there John Barrow, and the Republicans really had hoped to beat him with Max Burns. The president went into Georgia 3 different times campaigning for the Republicans, and now Barrow has pulled ahead with 71% of the precincts
This is
reporting.
their single best hope for a pickup in the country tonight. They're still holding out some hope, but if they lose that, it will be a disappointment.
And we have one other switch, I'm told, to the Democratic Party to report. This is in the 22nd District of Florida. Clay Shaw, who has been in the Congress, well, I think since Grover Cleveland was president. He's been around a long time, a good member of the House. Clay Shaw's a highly respected member of the House, and Klein has beaten.
This is a very, very important race, Charlie. Clay Shaw, as you say, a senior member of the House, a senior member of the Ways and Means Committee. His district was redrawn a couple of years ago to make it more Republican, so he'd be even safer. Democrats poured a lot of money into this one, but they weren't counting on it absolutely. This is a big, big pickup for them.
Well, we just did project that race, which now takes the Democrats to +8. And Koki was talking about low-hanging fruit. Clay Shaw is not low-hanging fruit.
That isn't. That's a competitive district, a Republican district, and one Republicans have wanted to keep. Democrats have targeted. You know, eventually we'll see the final number, but that is a big piece. It's in Florida, a battleground state, and as you said, it's a respected member, a well-funded member, someone who knew he would have a tough race, worked all year to save himself, wasn't able to do it.
So that's 2 districts now that the Republicans have lost to the Democrats in the state of Florida, and we can now project that the Democrats have picked up 9 seats There's a ninth seat that's come, or is that the Shaw? Is Shaw the ninth seat? I'm sorry, just call it out to me.
Pennsylvania 7.
Pennsylvania 7 we can now call. Let's take, do we have the board on that race? Pennsylvania 7 we can now project as going from the Republicans to the Democrats. This is Curt Weldon, again, who has been around a number of terms, losing to Joe Sestak, a retired admiral who was in the Navy for 31 years. Weldon also got touched by scandal. It doesn't help when 3 weeks before the election you can have on television pictures of FBI agents carrying equipment out of your daughter's house. There were accusations that are still being investigated that Weldon has thrown influence to his daughter's lobbying firm. The FBI is investigating, and that gave Joe Sestak a big boost. And Joe Sestak was on the National Security Council for Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton probably cared more about this race than any other race in the House.
So did John Kerry. Curt Weldon hung in there right up until the end, until that 3 weeks. The minute the FBI investigation became public, the bottom dropped out of that campaign.
So with Sestak's victory in Pennsylvania and with Klein's victory over Shaw in Florida, the Democrats have now picked up 9 of the 15 seats that they need to gain control of the House.
Getting very, very close, Charlie, and it really does look like Pennsylvania is one of the key stories of the night. We don't have all the seats left. I mean, projected yet in Pennsylvania. Still a couple of seats hanging out there in Philadelphia. We haven't completely called the Sherwood seat there, but you're looking at a potential pickup for the Democrats there, 2 to 5 seats, a big win for them in the Senate, a big win for them in the governor's race by Ed Rendell. That has become a key state for the Democrats.
And Republicans have a real hope to pick up a number of seats in New York. We don't have results there yet, and we're also looking for more seats. They are more looking for more seats, perhaps in the state of Ohio. And you mentioned Pennsylvania as well. So our coverage of Vote 2006 will continue, and we hope you'll stick around. Our entire election team is going to be here all night. We'll be on when Nightline begins, and we have a special edition of Nightline, as a matter of fact, with election results. So we thank you for staying with us so far. Hope you'll continue to do so through the night.
ABC Vote 2006 will continue in a moment.
Good evening and welcome to our coverage of Election Night 2006. It is a fascinating night, maybe even historic. There were a number of things that we were focusing on tonight. 15 and 6 were the numbers. In the Senate, Democrats had to gain 6 seats from the Republicans, have 6 switches. So far, they have gotten 3. There are 4 outstanding Senate seats that we're going to be talking about as the evening goes on. To get control of the Senate, Democrats would have to win 3 of them, but we'll get to that a little later. In the House, the Democrats were going to have to win 15 seats from the Republicans to gain control. So far, they've got a plus 19. The Democrats have gained control of the House. They will be in control of that body of the Congress when the House convenes next January. So where we stand overall, I said the Republicans have lost 3 seats to the Democrats in the Senate, 19 seats in the House. We're going to run it all down and tell you what races are outstanding as our Vote 2006 continues.
This is an ABC News special. Today, all across America, the people spoke. On Iraq, the war on terror, healthcare, the economy, values. And tonight, with so much on the line, we have the answers. Who controls the House and Senate? And what will tonight really mean for the race for the White House? From ABC News, this is Vote 2006. Now reporting from ABC News election headquarters in New York, Charles Gibson.
Well, we do have the results, and who controls the House? That will be the Democrats. Who controls the Senate? That is very much at issue right now, and we're going to get to all of this. And we're going to start right away by giving you some of the results that we're getting that are just bringing you up to date. We showed you that the Democrats have already won 19 seats from the Republicans in the House. Let me give you just a few examples and show you also some seats that the Republicans have been able to hold. Arizona is a state where we've gotten some recent results. Harry Mitchell there in the 5th District of Arizona has defeated J.D. Hayworth. Hayworth was 6 terms in the House. Harry Mitchell, a longtime mayor of Tempe, indeed they built a statue to him in that city. He was such a successful mayor. But Hayworth is a tough competitor, but nonetheless has gone down to defeat in that district. In Arizona's 8th district, this is one that the Democrats were almost certain they would pick up, with Gabrielle Giffords defeating Randy Graff, who is the founder of the Minutemen. A lot of people thought the Democrats won this race the moment Graff won the Republican primary, because he is a highly controversial and in many respects, with his hard line on immigration, alienated some of the Republican voters. In the Arizona 1st District, there the Republicans were able to hold that district. Rick Renzi, one of the fascinating things about Renzi, he has 12 kids, and all of them have names that begin in the letter R. Once you get past Ralph and Renee, where is there? But anyway, Arizona 1st District is held by Rick Renzi. In Kansas 2nd District, and this is a surprise, this is a solidly Republican district. And Jim Ryan, everybody remembers, was a high school 4-minute miler. Ryan has had 5 terms in the House. George Bush carried this district with 59% in the 2004 election. Nancy Boyda had run against him and lost badly 2 years ago. Defeats him tonight. Nancy Boyda, the new congressman from Kansas 2nd District.
Charlie, this is one of those scandal seats. Jim Ryan, after the Mark Foley scandal broke, said he didn't really know Mark Foley, even though Mark Foley lived on his street. The very next day, they found out that he was one of the hosts for a $1,000 plate fundraiser, never recovered.
George Stephanopoulos, our chief Washington correspondent, is joining us and will be with me for the next hour and a half as we report results. In the Florida 13th District, this is a district where Katherine Harris, the infamous to Democrats, famous to Republicans, Secretary of State during the 2000 election, when George Bush eked out that 537-vote margin to win Florida in the presidency. Katherine Harris left the district to run for the Senate. She was defeated badly there in Florida from the Senate race. And Vern Buchanan, an auto dealer, is 1,000 votes ahead. We project him as the winner. Oh, well, he's 100% of the precincts reporting. He has eked out a victory there over Christine Jennings. That race really shouldn't have been close. Buchanan poured an enormous amount of money, $5 million of his own money into that race, and wins
and Charlie,
narrowly.
We may be seeing a recount there. He's only about 360 votes up. This is a very close race, and that's something to remember. Even though we're projecting the Democrats are going to win the House, we may not know their final numbers for days or even longer as a lot of these close races come in.
In Florida's 22nd District, Clay Shaw has been 13 terms in the House of Representatives, considered a good member of the House. He goes down to defeat tonight to Ron Klein, who is a state senator, well-funded there. It hit him over and over again on the issue of Iraq, and we cannot emphasize how many races Iraq was the central issue. The Republicans wanted to make these races on local issues because they are local congressional campaigns. The Democrats tried to nationalize this campaign and were successful in so many districts. Clay Shaw, who was a real power in the House, in the Republican caucus, goes down to defeat.
Charlie, and to pick up on your point, we did a national exit poll tonight of what was on voters' minds. This election tonight, very clearly, a protest vote against the Iraq War, a protest vote against President Bush. Look at these numbers. 58% of the voters tonight said they did not approve of the job President Bush is doing. 57% said they do not approve of the war in Iraq right now. And then finally, we asked voters, how many of you are going to the polls to vote specifically against President Bush? 37% said they were registering a protest vote. Only 22% said they were going to the polls to support President Bush. About 39% said it wasn't a factor in their decision.
A couple of other House races that we want to talk about in Pennsylvania in the 7th District. This is in suburban Philadelphia. A lot of Republicans touched by scandal. Kurt Weldon, one of them, had 10 terms in the House, again a power in the Republican caucus. But there were raids on his daughter's office and accusations being investigated that perhaps he had funneled business to his daughter's lobbying firm. And when you have those kinds of pictures in the paper 3 weeks before the election, it's hard. Joe Sestak, a retired vice admiral on the Democratic side, this was the #1 race to Bill Clinton because Sestak had been on his national security staff. Sestak wins there over Weldon in suburban Philadelphia. In the 10th District of Pennsylvania, another so-called scandal district, Don Sherwood had to take ads to apologize to the district for having had an affair and perhaps beaten up his mistress. He settled a lawsuit that she brought against him for $500,000. When he went on television and made those kinds of apologies, it put Chris Carney, his opponent, in an awfully good position, and Carney has defeated Sherwood in Pennsylvania's 10th District. A couple of other districts that the Republicans had hoped to win from the Democrats. Now, I should point out, at this hour, the Republicans have had no switches, Democrat to Republican, but 2 races they're watching very closely in Georgia. In the 8th District, they were hoping to defeat Jim Marshall, the incumbent. And as you can see there now, with 93% of the precincts reporting, Mac Collins, who was himself a former member of the House of Representatives, is leading Marshall. That would be a pickup for the Republicans. They have not had one yet tonight that we can project. And in the 12th District of Georgia, another piece of perhaps good news. The Republicans have been leading in this race. Now John Barrow, the Democratic incumbent, is pulled into a narrow lead with 92% of the precincts reporting, but Republicans still have hopes in this district. But as of yet, we've been able to report no Republican pickups from the Democrats.
Which would be historic if it holds up. On the other hand, Charlie, if the Republicans can get those 2 districts in Georgia, it illuminates one of the big themes we're seeing tonight. Moderate, liberal Republicans up in the Northeast are getting beat. So the Northeast is getting more Democratic. The South getting even more conservative, even more Republican.
Cokie Roberts has covered the House of Representatives, as I've said, since she was about 6 years old. Her dad was a longtime member of the House from Louisiana, was the majority leader there, Hale Boggs, and Cokie knows the House, I think, about as well as anybody in the country. And Cokie, as you look at these results, now the Republicans, we've just had another call for the Republicans, they're now plus 20. At the moment, losing no seats, although that one seat in Georgia they're trailing. But this is quite a night for the Democrats as far as the House is concerned.
It is indeed, and the Democrats have worked hard for it after having had the House for 40 years and then having the shock of losing it. And it really was a shock in 1994 to them. They have toiled in the wilderness and worked hard to get back and are thrilled to have done so. Now, there are some really interesting races here, Charlie, and I said earlier that the Democrats were winning the low fruit, and that was because they were picking up districts where there was either scandal or where Democrats basically owned the districts. John Kerry had carried them in 2004, and Democrats should have had the districts. We've had a couple of big surprises since then, and they tell you something. One in New Hampshire, where the Democrat who beat the incumbent Republican, giving New Hampshire now 2 Democratic congressmen for the first time since Woodrow Wilson. That Democrat had won the primary much to the dismay of the Democratic Party because she was so far out on the war and she had no money at all, really no support, and she has won, and she's won because of Iraq. And then in Pennsylvania, where Melissa Hart was in a solidly Republican district, had no scandal, the Democrat who beat her just tied George Bush and Rick Santorum, the senator who was defeated earlier tonight in Pennsylvania, just tied them around her neck and wouldn't let him go. And he won just doing that. So it was Iraq, Iraq, Iraq. Now that Democrat is a pro-gun, pro-life Democrat, as is the Democrat who won for the Senate in Pennsylvania. So we're going to have a lot of mixes and matches inside this Democratic Party when they convene in January, having taken the House.
And I should mention, by the way, that the ABC News decision desk and ABC News in general is projecting now, when we get to the end of this, that somewhere the Democrats will pick up somewhere between 26 and 38 seats in the House of Representatives, which will give them a comfortable majority there.
Relatively comfortable majority. It also put them right in line with what has happened to war presidents in this country all the way going back to 1860. On average, there have been 5 congressional elections done during wartime since 1860. The presidents have lost about 35 House seats and 5 Senate seats in those elections.
Just to mention, by the way, the 20th House seat that we see going from the Republican to the Democrats is the Wisconsin 8th District. That is where Mark Green, the Republican, has retired to run for governor in Wisconsin, and we're projecting now in the Wisconsin 8th that Stephen Kagan will beat John Gard for the 20th seat that the Democrats have picked up. We're now ready with a projection in the Tennessee Senate race. This is a race that the Democrats had hoped to win with Harold Ford Jr. We are now projecting that Bob Corker, the mayor of Chattanooga, will win that Tennessee Senate seat and hold it for the Republicans. That is a big victory for the Republicans and makes it even more problematical that the Democrats can gain control of the Senate. And we will show you why in just a moment. I want to show you the switches in the Senate so far tonight. We have 3 switches from Republican to Democrat. Those are in the states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. 3 switches, Republican to Democrat in those seats. You see the chips in that blue square on the left-hand side of your screen. Ohio, Sherrod Brown defeated Mike DeWine. Pennsylvania, that is the race where Rick Santorum was defeated by Bob Casey. And in Rhode Island, Lincoln Chafee going down to Sheldon Whitehouse. Now, I want to show you the board that we have been playing with all night long. There were really, first of all, there are 33 Senate seats to be chosen tonight, but really only 11 were contested. Republicans were defending 8 of them, listed here. Democrats were defending 3. The Democrats held all 3 of the seats they were defending, in Maryland, in Michigan, and in New Jersey. Maryland with Cardin winning, Michigan with Stabenow winning, and New Jersey with Menendez winning. Now, In these 8 states, we've just declared that in Tennessee, we're projecting a win for Bob Corker. So there are only 3 Senate seats outstanding. If the Democrats are going to get to 6, you can see they have a net gain so far of 3 in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. If they're going to get control of the Senate, they've got to win all 3 seats in Missouri and in Montana and in Virginia. Can they do it? Well, let's look at where those races stand right now. Let's start with Missouri. This is the race where Jim Talent, the incumbent Republican, is running against Claire McCaskill. And at this hour, with 69% of the district precincts reporting, Jim Talent, as you can see, has a 48,000 vote lead. 733 to Claire McCaskill's 685. It would appear, if that lead holds, that Jim Talent will hold that seat for the Republicans and make it impossible for the Democrats to gain control of the Senate.
But Democrats are still holding out hope here. They say that the big vote hasn't yet come in from Kansas City and St. Louis, where they expect McCaskill to do quite well. On the other hand, something that seems to be working against McCaskill, that initiative in the state of Missouri that was supposed to expand stem cell research, put that into the Missouri Constitution, looks like it's going down.
To defeat. That's the district, by the way, where Michael J. Fox made that ad supporting Claire McCaskill. And at the moment, Talent is leading, but as George points out, there is vote to come from Kansas City and St. Louis, a traditional Democratic vote. In the state of Montana, that is the state where Conrad Burns is the incumbent with 3 terms in the Senate, running against John Tester. We have 31% of the districts there, or the precincts, reporting, and Tester has a 14,000 vote lead. It would appear if that vote holds, and Burns has been an underdog in that race throughout, if that leads hold, Tester will carry that seat for the Democrats. And then the one that is just tight as a tick, and we've been following all night long. This is the Virginia Senate race between George Allen, the incumbent, and Jim Webb, the former Republican Navy Secretary who switched to the Democratic Party. 99% of the precincts reporting, and as you can look how close this is. I mean, this is what makes politics so fascinating. Jim Webb has 1,143,000 votes. George Allen has 1,141,000 votes. Our decision desk has said there's no way we're going to call that one tonight. We're going to get down to absentee ballots there in Virginia. We're invariably, certainly going to get to a recount in the state of Virginia.
That's exactly right. And meanwhile, in Montana, the voting machines have broken down, so they're counting by hand. So this is going to be a very long night, a very long day tomorrow. This Senate race, though, in Virginia, George Allen went into this race thinking he was going to be running for president in 2008 after getting propelled by a big win here. He had a lot of missteps, the famous macaca comment. It should have never been close, but Jim Webb has given him the toughest race of his life.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that if George Allen had never gone out of his house and campaigned, if he had just stayed home, he would have won this race, that his campaign actually cost him votes.
And it definitely did. On the other hand, you also have to remember the state of Virginia is changing. It's not part of the hard, deep South anymore. Northern Virginia, very diverse, moving much more towards the Democrats. It's really shifting.
All right. A lot of people have been worried about voting machines and whether they were going to be working properly in this election. Jake Tapper has been covering that. We're going to talk about just how easily and how efficiently the vote has been counted this year when we go to Jake after a commercial, and we're also going to run down where the governors stand at this hour. So stay with us. Our coverage of Vote 2006 continues.
Across America, the nation, Americans have gone to the polls. This is an ABC News special. Live coverage of Vote 2006 will continue in a moment. In this midterm election, the Republicans are fighting a difficult historic trend. In the 5 wartime congressional elections since 1860, the president's party has suffered significant defeats, losing an average of 36 House seats and 5 Senate seats. ABC Vote 2006 continues. Once again, Charles Gibson.
Back to our election headquarters in New York, and just to sum up where we stand right now, because it is the story of the night, the Democrats have gained control of the House of Representatives. They needed to take 15 seats away from the Republicans. So far, they have taken 21, and it is our projection when the night is over, they will take somewhere between 26 and 38 seats away from the Republicans. And so far, the Republicans have taken 0 seats away from the Democrats. The Senate, much more problematical. The Democrats have a gain of 3 seats. There are 3 races outstanding. The Democrats would have to carry all of them in Missouri and Montana and Virginia to take control of the Senate, and they are trailing significantly in Missouri, although Democrats are not giving up there. They are leading in Montana. And Virginia, well, Virginia is just essentially dead even, and we're not going to know until there is a recount who has won the state of Virginia. Now, a lot of people worried about the voting machines this year and whether they would function properly. 33% of this country in this election voted with machines that have never been used before in a national election. Jake Tapper has been checking on voting irregularities through the night in Columbus, Ohio. Jake, how's it going?
Well, there were glitches all over the country, from Cleveland to Tennessee to Indiana, but the good news is generally those seem to be in the minority. There were places where precincts in Ohio and elsewhere that had to be kept open past the normal time, past the deadline, so as to compensate for the voters that had to wait in lines because the machines were not operating correctly or because the poll workers didn't know how to use the machines correctly. That said, generally this is a good news day, at least it appears so right now.
All right. Jake Tapper, thanks, reporting from Ohio. Now, Nancy Pelosi will be, she's the presumptive next Speaker of the House of Representatives. She is a controversial figure. Republicans tried to make Pelosi an issue in many districts around the country, saying if you go to a Democratic majority, you're going to have a liberal from San Francisco as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. She would be the 52nd Speaker of the House, the first woman ever to hold that job. And if you're a good student of history and of government, you know that the Speaker of the House is third in line for the presidency. Nancy Pelosi came out and talked to Democratic supporters at headquarters in Washington. Here's a little bit of what she had to say.
Tonight is a great victory for the American people. Today, the American people voted for change, and they voted for Democrats to take our country in a new direction. And that is exactly what we intend to do.
Nancy Pelosi declaring victory to a very ebullient group of Democrats. They will control the House of Representatives, will the Democrats, for the first time since 1994. We'll take a break and be back.
Live coverage of the vote across America will continue live from ABC News election headquarters in New York in just a moment.
And we welcome you back to our election headquarters in New York. There are a number of referenda that were on various state ballots that we want to talk about because they got a lot of publicity, and probably none more than in South Dakota. As you may know, the legislature in South Dakota passed a very, very broad ban on abortion. Actually did so hoping that this would go to the Supreme Court and they could get a definitive ruling on the issue of abortion. But then on the state ballot in South Dakota was a measure to reinstate that broad ban on abortion, and it has gone down. It's been defeated, so that broad ban will not be instituted in the state of South Dakota.
And a lot of people in the pro-life movement think it was a miscalculation to try to push this very, very restrictive ban, which didn't even include exceptions for rape or incest. For the voters of South Dakota, that was just too much to bear.
Yes, it actually was interesting that people on both sides of the abortion issue were actually arguing against it. And if there's any surprise, and I don't mean to try to read the voters of South Dakota, it actually sort of surprises me that it got 45%.
Well, you know, that's the hardline pro-life vote in America right there.
Right. Gay marriage bans were on the ballot in 8 states. We don't have enough information on 3 of them, but a gay marriage ban has passed in the state of Idaho, in South Carolina, in Tennessee, and in Virginia, and in Wisconsin. We still don't know the results. They're not definitive yet in South Dakota, Colorado, or Arizona, but in 5 states, a gay marriage ban has passed. And then there were minimum wage increases on the ballots in 6 states. It's interesting. The federal government has been stymied on this issue. A lot of Democrats pushing it to get a federal increase in the minimum wage, but many states are doing it on their own. It was on the ballot in 6 states, as you saw, in Ohio, Missouri, Arizona, Montana, and Nevada. It passed, and still we don't have enough information yet in Colorado.
And what Democrats saw here was the Republican strategy, conservative strategy on gay marriage. They saw these initiatives being used in states to get their way and to turn out the vote. They said, let's do the same thing with our most popular issue, the minimum wage. They seem to be passing. It is also one of the top agenda items for the presumptive speaker to be Nancy Pelosi.
Yes, there was some thought in the state of Missouri that it might turn out a vote for Claire McCaskill, the Democrat running for the Senate there. She is still trailing, although that race is still too close to call. And you pointed out there was an expansion of stem cell research on the Missouri ballot, and that has been defeated.
Amazing. You know, what the opponents of embryonic stem cell research were able to do with that initiative is say that it was also allowing human cloning, and it would lead to women selling their eggs, and that argument proved persuasive.
And that was a race where Michael J. Fox went in with a very effective ad in favor of Claire McCaskill, also obviously arguing implicitly for the stem cell research expansion in Missouri, and it didn't pass.
It did not pass. Unclear yet what effect it had on this actual Senate race. So far, it likely drove up turnout on both sides.
All right. So we're going to get to the governor's races when we continue, because there are 36 governors up today, and there are a number of switches, all of them from the Republican to the Democratic side. And we will run those down, as well as give you what happened in the California governor's race when we continue. Stay with us.
ABC Vote 2006 will continue after this from our ABC stations.
And good morning to you. It is a new day in America. The people have spoken. A seismic shift in the House of Representatives of the United States as the Democrats take control.
But it is another story in the Senate where two races are still up for grabs for control of the Senate, still hanging in the balance. Of votes are still being tallied in Montana, where they have been counting throughout the night.
And in Virginia, too close to call. We may not know the winner anytime soon. America facing some big questions this morning. It is a morning full of drama. We bring you the latest on the woman poised to be the first female Speaker of the House in history.
Today, the American people voted for change, and they voted for Democrats to take our country in a new direction.
And this morning, the human side, the tears, the dancing, and a night of surprises. The latest reporting on the last-minute vote counts from our political team. And how is your life about to change? Your pocketbook, immigrants at the border, medical research. We have it all right here on Good Morning America.
This is a special edition of Good Morning America Vote 2006, live from Times Square with Diane Sawyer and Robin Roberts.
And here we are welcoming you on this new morning, a special live broadcast for the West Coast, still covering that breaking news. As we said, Montana and Virginia will determine control of the Senate this morning. House already done. Good to have you with us.
It's got to be a morning after. For some people, it's still the same day, but it is Wednesday, November 8th, 2006. And this we do know for sure, that the Democrats have taken control of the House, picking up 26 seats. In the Senate, they picked up 4 seats so far, as we've been saying, just 2 shy of taking control there.
And, of course, the state out west, Montana, about to make a lot of difference. Less than 2,000 votes separating the candidates there as they're recounting. And we'll head there in just a second.
And in Virginia, the race also close there. Just over 7,000 votes separate Republican George Allen and the Democrat there, James Webb. Out of more than 2 million votes cast, the Democrat is in the lead. It could send them into a recount that would not start until after Thanksgiving, November 28th. So America could be in suspense until like mid-December.
Whatever those uncertainties, there were some real certainties about the message being sent during the voting yesterday. 57% of the voters said they disapprove of President Bush's job performance. 56% came out saying they disapprove of the war in Iraq. Married women turned out to play a key role, and we'll tell you what that is. But right now, as we said, the story is out west in Montana. A very close race, tighter than a new pair of shoes, as one candidate said. And it could be weeks before counts and recounts are settled across the country, especially in Virginia. We'll get to that in a moment. But in Montana, one election official is having a really bad morning because he is the one who forgot to set the counting machine properly. So they've been up all night counting by hand. Let's check in right now with ABC's John Donvan in Yellowstone County, Montana. John?
Well, I know you're talking again about Dwayne Winslow, who has become everybody's favorite election official over the last 24 hours because he stepped right up and said that the reason that the voting was delayed here in Yellowstone County significantly by about 6 hours while everyone in the nation was waiting was because he pushed the wrong button. But he stood up and said it was my fault. The serious side of this is that at this point, as you've said repeatedly, Montana does not have a winner. We came into this with the race neck and neck. It remains amazingly close. The state has more or less finished counting most of its ballots in most places, but we're now at the point where the provisional ballots and the damaged ballots have to be counted, and they number, to the best that we can determine, at least in the several hundred and possibly more. So it's for that reason that Conrad Burns, the incumbent, who, by most accounts, according to Associated Press, is trailing slightly, very, very slightly, has not conceded and is not expected to concede. Whether he's going to ask for a recount, we don't know, but it would not be a surprise because at this point, again, with the numbers being where they are and with the numbers being at this point as incomplete as they are, we just don't really know who's the winner in Montana yet. Robin, Diane?
All right, John, thank you very much. And you have to give credit for the guy who stood up and said, you know what? Oops, I made a mistake, and moving forward. That's the situation in Montana. As we were saying, Virginia is the other half of the equation that could decide who controls the Senate. So let's go to ABC senior national correspondent Claire Shipman, who is in Arlington, Virginia. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning, Robin. I'll tell you, this race has been a bitter nail-biter all along, and now it looks as though the end of this drama may not come until mid-December. Here's where things stand right now. The Democratic challenger, Jim Webb, is leading the Republican Senator George Allen by just over 7,000 votes. And in the early hours of the morning, George Allen was urging caution as Jim Webb was claiming victory.
An interesting election, and the election continues.
But also, we'd like to say that the votes are in and we won.
Now, here's what will happen. The remaining votes will be counted. 99% of the precincts have reported so far, but the remaining votes will be counted, and then the vote will be certified. But that won't happen until some canvassing happens, some retabulating, essentially. That will happen November 27th. Finally, then, if the margin is still within 1%, either candidate can ask for a recount, and we wouldn't get the results of that until mid-December. Diane?
Okay, Claire, we'll keep everyone posted. But of course, as we saw all night long, elections are not just about the cold numbers, also about the democracy of the human drama. After all the handshaking, the hard fights, some candidates were left searching for brave faces, while others and their families were over the moon.
Is this a great night for Democrats?
This is the dance Democrats do when dancing for joy.
It has been a long time since our party really had something to celebrate.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Out on the West Coast, California Governor Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger celebrating his way under a barrage of balloons. And then back in New York, two Democrats everyone is watching, Senator Hillary Clinton and her husband.
It is the greatest privilege that I could have to be your senator.
And listen to the sly song playing as she exits the stage. The song, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. And for one veteran of these contests, the former Democrat, it was all about doing it his way and winning as an independent.
I'm Joe Lieberman, and I approve of this election.
But as everyone knows, with the thrill of someone's victory comes the agony of someone's defeat, sometimes simply gracious.
It's now time for all of us to figure out how we come back together and heal and make this thing called our country work again.
And so often, as we know, it is a family affair. A grown man, a senator from Pennsylvania, concedes. By his side, his daughter, who wrestles and struggles and squeezes her doll to try to hold back tears.
It's such a tearful scene for her last night. Well, this morning, to analyze everything we learned with people coming out of the polls, we've got ABC's senior political correspondent here with us, George Stephanopoulos.
Hello.
Give us the top two things that surprised you.
Number one is how big independents went to Democrats by a huge margin, 57 to 39. We haven't seen those kind of numbers in more than 10 years. Big, big swing. for the Democrats. The second thing that surprised me is the Democrats actually won, and it's going to sound unusual, men. Democrats just don't win men in national elections. They won them last night by a small margin, but they did it.
Yeah, that's a historic shift.
Also, the killing fields, you were referring to it on the days leading up to the election, and it's funny when you see the map now, and you talked about this also, about how you look at the Northeast now, and it's more Democrats. And
all
then,
blue.
I know, and
all
then down
blue.
south.
And if you look at those killing fields, it's the five states going from Indiana, Ohio, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York. There were 21 seats in play there. The Democrats won 11, could win 13. Two other states to look at, and this surprised me as well. The two big presidential states, well, they're actually small, Iowa and New Hampshire. Republican House members were wiped out in both states. For the first time since Woodrow Wilson was president, you have two Democratic congresspeople from New Hampshire.
Not just the Democratic Party that had a big night last night. Probably the best record so far, Michael J. Fox.
Big night for Michael J. Fox. Right now, he's racked up 4 wins. He campaigned in Missouri, Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio Senate races. All 4 won. If Jim Webb comes in Virginia, Michael J. Fox was 5 for 5 on stem cell research.
The other thing that surprised me looking through the exit polling was that the Democrats gained so much ground on the issue of terrorism and trust to handle terrorism. And that had always been the high ground for the president. That's where he always
3 elections. He was hoping for a 3rd election in a row. In 2002, in 2004, President Bush and the Republicans won on the issue of national security and terrorism. They had huge leads on it. Last night, they only had a small 5-point lead among people who cared about terrorism. On the other hand, if Iraq was your #1 issue, and it was for most voters, it broke heavily for the Democrats, more than 60% to the Democrats.
Do you think the president heard the people? Did he hear what people going out and voting that was very strong?
I think that's the message we're going to get from the president at his press conference a little later today. He's going to say, I have heard you. I am ready to work with the Democrats. He's been making very gracious calls to Democrats all morning.
And you've been going that.
This is my Super Bowl. You know, this is it for me, right?
I know, 30 minutes sleep, maybe, in how many days? Thanks, George.
It's good to be with you.
I know, another long day ahead. All right, George, thank you. Earlier, we spoke to Republican National Committee Chairman Ken Mehlman for a little post-game analysis. I asked him what happened to the Republicans last night.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of data we're going to go to look through, but it was a very difficult evening for our party. On a personal level, I have to say it was disappointing for me. I lost a number of friends in Congress, Jim Talent, Rick Santorum, Bob Ehrlich, governor of Maryland. These are all people that I respect a lot. These are all people of principle. I'm very disappointed that they lost. At the same time, Robin, you know, one thing I strongly believe, and that is when you have difficulty, you try to learn from it and you try to be better. And I think we as a party need to look at what happened. The people clearly sent us a message. We need to receive that message, and then we need to recommit ourselves to our key principles. We need to try to work on a bipartisan basis to accomplish things for our country. A lot of the problems we face are not Republican problems or Democratic problems, but American problems. And we've also got to make sure the #1 issue listed was corruption. We've got to make sure, it seems to me, that people that are involved, whether it's in the Congress or at other levels, are people who public service is the top calling and the top goal. And all of those have got to be important things. I'm disappointed that for the first time since 1994 there won't be a Republican speaker. At the same time, I think it's worth stepping back for a second and looking at the incredible accomplishments over the last 12 years. Welfare reform, jobs created, our nation more secure. All of these are things that Republicans have done because we focused on our principles. We've got to do the same thing over the coming years.
The speaker will now be the first woman ever, Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
How will she and the president work together?
Well, first of all, let me just say I congratulate Nancy Pelosi. I congratulate Rahm Emanuel. I congratulate them on their victory last night. The fact that America will have its first female speaker, I would prefer it to be a Republican, of course, but that's an historic accomplishment that we can all take pride in. I think there are a lot of issues that aren't Republican issues. You know, if you stop and think historically, the war in Iraq, there's a parallel to that, it seems to me, and that's the Korean War, which at the time there was a tremendous amount of public concern and anxiety about. But in those early years of the Cold War, Republicans and Democrats came together behind something that was called the Truman Doctrine because they recognized that the threat of Soviet communism wasn't a threat to Democrats or Republicans, but to all Americans. It seems to me the threat of Islamic fascism is a similar threat. And we need to come together as a nation and across partisan lines recognizing that what the enemy threatens is all of our freedoms and all of our security, and we can work together to make that happen. There are other areas too. Immigration reform is one, health care is one, and there are others as well.
Well, Ken Mehlman, thank you very much. I know you saw the president last night. You had dinner with him.
Did.
A long day again today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Take care.
And they said it would be the year of the woman. We were just talking about Nancy Pelosi here. But the predictions came true nationwide, too, in terms of the races. All in all, the total number of women now serving in the House could increase by as many as 15. And as you heard, Nancy Pelosi will be the first Speaker of the House to be female in history. So we thought this morning it's time to take a closer look at what she'll do and who she is. And here's GMA Senior National Correspondent Claire Shipman.
Democrats are ready to lead.
The woman who's dragged her fractious party across the finish line is a political oxymoron, a disciplined Democrat.
I thought I could have a winning strategy, but it did take organization, focus, and discipline.
The no-nonsense mother of five, grandmother of five, didn't even run for Congress until she was 46 years old. But growing up, watching her father, the Baltimore mayor, she learned the tricks of political horse trading early.
There are colleagues who are ill-informed.
As minority leader, for example, she hasn't hesitated to withhold favors or leadership positions from Democrats who vote the wrong way.
Do you think of yourself as a tough politician? I think of myself as a very strong person who never loses focus.
And so look for this to remain a key refrain in her new job.
We do want to bring troops home because we are not a force for stabilizing Iraq.
Pelosi insists, though, that her rough campaign attacks on the president will melt into a more bipartisan tone.
The fact that we would have our troops in harm's way for whatever reason is reason enough for us to come together to work for the good of our country.
For Good Morning America, Claire Shipman, ABC News, Washington.
And in California, waking up to what the LA Times is calling a political landslide, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger walked off with a decisive win. But across the West, some of the biggest fireworks were over hotly contested voter initiatives. ABC's Heather Nauert is live in Los Angeles with the details there. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning, Robin. All across the West, voter turnout was heavy. Folks went to the polls to vote for candidates, but also to vote on ballot initiatives. Here in California, there were 13 initiatives on the ballot, outlined here in this 200-page voter guide. But the real headline out of California is that Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger won his first election to a full term. A resounding victory for Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man accustomed to making sequels.
I love doing sequels.
Just 1 year ago, California voters rejected his 4 controversial ballot propositions. But that hasn't stopped the propositions from weighing down the ballot. Proposition 87 was the most hotly contested and most expensive ballot fight ever waged here. It would have levied a $4 billion tax on California oil producers to spur the use of alternative energy.
America has to change.
Despite high-profile backers such as Bill Clinton, it failed. Nationwide, voters faced more than 200 ballot initiatives, 40 more than in 2004. In no place are they more prevalent than in the West. In Colorado, less than a week after revelations about evangelical leader Ted Haggard, voters here rejected measures outlawing gay marriage and benefits to same-sex couples. In South Dakota, the most contested race centered around a ballot initiative that would have banned nearly all abortions in the state. The law would have been the strictest in the nation. It failed. Arizona was the state with the most initiatives. 3 cracking down on illegal immigrants passed. But in what is arguably the single most unusual initiative, Arizonans voted against a lottery that would have given $1 million to a voter in each general election. Supporters hoped the measure would have encouraged more people to vote. We spoke to an expert who follows all these voter initiatives. He said expect to see a lot more of them in the future. One reason, politicians, it's an easy way for them to avoid hot-button issues like the minimum wage. Robin?
That's one way of doing it. All right, Heather, thank you. And now we go to Chris Cuomo with this morning's other headline.
Good morning, America. That's a live shot. You wouldn't know it's morning, but it is in the capital of the United States. You're looking at the Capitol building in the distance there, Pennsylvania Avenue. And maybe the fog is a symbol as we await the results on the Senate and who will control the Senate. Montana and Virginia still counting this morning as we say hello again. Diane Sawyer here with Robin Roberts, Chris Cuomo, and Sam Champion.
Sam Champion couldn't take his eyes off of the fog. He's like, I want to say something, but I have to. You were?
No, you were right. I was like, fog.
Well, what is clear this morning, and not in the fog, is that the Democrats have gained control of the House. And we thought in this half hour we'd be asking how this seismic shift in power will affect your family, your life, your wallet. We have all the players here to break down what the results really will mean for you in the coming months.
And there's also other news this morning. I don't know how this got lost on Election Day, but in case you haven't heard, Britney Spears, she has filed for divorce from her husband, Kevin Federline. What will happen to their 2 young children? You always have to keep the kids in mind. And also her $50 million fortune will take you inside their high-stakes split a little bit later.
But we do know that this morning the president is waking up to a whole new political world, perhaps a little bleary-eyed. We know he stayed up past his bedtime, which is usually very early. He stayed in the White House. He gathered a group of people around him. We're told what they ate. They ate beef and corn soup. Make of that what you will. Apple tart. I know these things. And ABC's chief White House correspondent Martha Raddatz is here to tell us about the latest on the White House reaction to these results this morning. Martha.
Diane, the president was up late last night, far past his bedtime. He had met with aides during the evening, watching the returns come in. Just before midnight, a White House spokesman said that the group was disappointed by the House returns. That's all they had last night, but the Senate numbers were starting to come in. But the president was up early this morning calling winners and losers in the race. He called outgoing Speaker of the House Dennis Hastert and the likely incoming Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. A person familiar with those calls said Representative Pelosi told the president, "Your success is our success," and that President Bush told Representative Pelosi, "I think we can work together for the next 2 years." The two have not had a very good relationship in the past. The president did invite Nancy Pelosi to lunch on Thursday, so the president and Pelosi will dine at the White House on Thursday. And this afternoon, the president is going to have a full-scale press conference. He will likely get some very tough questions. Diane?
All right, Martha, will stay with us this morning because we do have those results coming in. I keep thinking of Lyndon Johnson saying that in moments like this, being president's like being a donkey in a hailstorm. You just got to stand there and figure out what you're going to do next.
Weather the storm. All right. Thank you, Diane. And the question this morning is not simply who won, but how will the winners change your world, from your wallets to your families to your futures? Joining us now to tackle those questions in Washington, a woman who has, well, she's read the tea leaves for many, many elections. ABC's Cokie Roberts, good to see her. Also, senior national correspondent Claire Shipman is back with us. And in Memphis, financial contributor Melody Hobson. She is president also of Ariel Capital Management. Let's start money first, Melody. The first time in 12 years that the Democrats have control of the House. Not sure what's going to happen in the Senate right now. What does that mean for the economy?
It's probably going to be very good for the economy. If history is any indication, it's been clear that the economy likes it when the parties do not control both the House, the Senate, and the White House. And basically what happens, there's gridlock. And the gridlock means it's not easy to spend money, and it's not easy to pass a lot of laws that makes it hard to run a business. And that's good for the economy.
And as far as the House is concerned, and now that you have Democrats that will be in charge of these very powerful committees, what programs do you see changing right away?
Well, I think the one that the Democrats have made the most noise about is minimum wage. The minimum wage has not gone up in 9 years. And if you look at it on an inflation-adjusted basis, it is at its lowest level since 1955. So it really has been hard for the rank-and-file American to do very well. They've been disappointed by this, and I think they're going to go in and push hard for minimum wage to go up.
All right, Melody, thank you. Let's move on to Claire now and talk about the war, because we've said over and over this morning, you know, watching the exit polls and just a referendum on Iraq and on President Bush. But going back to Iraq, Claire, are we going to see a difference now? Is it going to be different now in Iraq?
Well, I think we will see a difference. It's going to be slow, obviously. We're not going to see an immediate difference. But here's what's likely to happen. First of all, the Republicans and this administration are going to have to acknowledge what the voters have said at the polls, that they're concerned about Iraq and that they've lost faith in many of them, in the Republicans and in this administration to do the job. Having a Democratic-controlled Congress is going to give them an enormous amount of power over, for example, investigations. We may see some investigations launched in terms of the start of the war, how the war has been conducted. Furthermore, there's the power of the purse. So Democrats will have some amount of oversight pressure and financial pressure to push the White House, but also there's the Baker Commission waiting in the wings. They've been studying this. The former Secretary of State, James Baker, has been looking at this issue. A lot of Republicans say behind the scenes they see this as some sort of way out for President Bush, a way to try to solve this problem, to look at a drawdown of U.S. troops, and they're waiting for Baker to offer the president the cover to do that, if you will. So I think that might come together.
All right, Claire, thank you. Let's move on to ethics now and bring in Cokie Roberts, because there are a lot of issues that both sides were hoping would bring people to the polls, such as stem cell research, and as we said, a very good night for Michael J. Fox, all those that he backed, and also gay marriage. So what is the impact that we saw there, Cokie?
Well, it's in the states, Robin, and really what happens in Washington on those issues doesn't mean very much. Washington's not going to pass a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage. The states, and 8 states it was on the ballot, and 7 of them have put in some restriction on gay marriage and civil unions in some cases. Arizona, it seems to be maybe going down, that restriction. We'll see. It's still too close to call. On stem cells, the Congress, on Republican hands, passed stem cell research, and the president vetoed it, his only veto. So I think maybe the Democrats will bring it back up, and we'll see what the president will do. It appears that the plan to allow stem cell research to go forward in Missouri has narrowly passed. Again, very close vote, still counting.
Still counting. I also want to ask you, and I know something that's very close to you. Your mother, of course, was a pioneer when it came to the House, and was first from Louisiana. First woman congresswoman from Louisiana, one of like 16 women at that time in the 70s. Now we have Nancy Pelosi as a Speaker of the House. How significant is that, Cokie?
Oh, I think it's tremendously significant, and we're likely to have 70-some women in the House, maybe 80, and 16 in the Senate. These are big advances, but Nancy Pelosi will bring a style that is different to the speakership. Let me just tell you one little tidbit. Her daughter Alexandra is due to have a baby any minute, and everybody knew that if that baby came, that Nancy Pelosi, regardless of the fact that she was about to take over the House and have the great night of her life, was ready to leave and just go to her daughter. I think you wouldn't necessarily see that with a male speaker, and it is just a difference. We've seen over the years women in the House and Senate reaching across party lines on issues that matter to women, children, and families, particularly economic issues, issues relating to health. And I think you're likely to see much more of that in this regime.
Most likely so. Okay, Cokie, thank you, all three. Cokie Roberts, Claire Shipman, and Melody Hobson, thank you for putting it all in perspective for us this morning. Sure do appreciate that. What's the first issue you want to see the new Congress address? Why don't you let us know at our website at abcnews.com, the GMA page. Now let's get to Sam and another check of the weather.